So let's have a listen to this. So first thing that I want to roast you on is playing your notes out of time. So make sure that you're, playing lines out of time. This is something that I was actually talking to Ryan about, Ryan Clenny, because when he speeds up and tries to play faster lines, I noticed his lines were going out of time. So
Okay.
I think what I recommended to him was a very simple exercise, just playing scales linearly over the backing track, but just making sure that you're doing it in time. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's kind of like using a metronome, except you're just using the track, but that will at least let you know how the 16th note lines should sound like over the track. In this case, those would actually be 8th note lines, I think, that you were playing, because it's just a fast track. The BPM is like 196, right?
Yes.
But rhythm is very important. It's better to play wrong notes with good time than it is to play right notes with bad time. Right?
Okay.
Let's keep going. So what are your own thoughts? Like you talked a little bit about it before we started playing, before we started watching it. Can you remind me, like, what's going through your head when you're improvising?
Yeah, I wanted to stay in the boxes as much as I could, and try to find lines there, which was quite challenging actually, because I was trying to avoid to sound very scalar, but like it still sounds very scalar. And that was mostly it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that does kind of change the way that I think about this a little bit, because when I was listening to this from a musical perspective, I noticed that every 4 bars is when you would start a new sort of melody, and it was very predictable that way. Like you would start a melody and you would run with it, which I think is cool, right? Kind of create a sequence. But when a 4-bar phrase would end, you would end that melody and you would then move on and create a new melody, which is not a bad thing, but you did it a lot of times and it became predictable. But now that I know, you reminded me, because I completely forgot or something, you reminded me that you're trying to stay within the shapes, like that's the constraint that you put on yourself, to stay within a shape. That makes more sense, for sure, because at the end of a 4-bar phrase, you're going to switch to a new shape. So in terms of like the musicality here, I understand what you were thinking, and it makes sense. I'm not going to like really grill you for that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, and let's watch it again, because I want to look at it with that perspective. I think I really liked the section where you were playing that. I guess it was kind of short, but it was like that, and it was kind of short. But when you're bending the string, it stylistically sounds so good over this backing track. And another thing that I think is cool is the ascension. So when you are ascending in pitch over this track, like this is a high energy track, you're doing a good job of building tension. Like that's always something you can do to build tension, is ascend, right? You can also leave space, like silence in your playing, or you can repeat something. So those are like 3 things that you can do to build tension. I would have liked to see maybe a little bit more of that, or at least you drag that phrase out a little bit longer. Well, because it wasn't really much of a phrase. It was more of just like a short little passage. But that would have been cool. And yeah. So everything that I've said so far, rhythm is definitely the most important. Just make sure that you're playing your notes in your lines in time as best as you can.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's cool to build tension in the ways that you can do that, where, as I just listed, you can ascend, you can repeat things, or you can not play at all, leave space. And yeah, you were also working on creating melodies, which obviously I noticed immediately, and that's good as well. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. That works a lot. I just it was really hard to stay in the boxes.
Why do you think that was?
Because the way I kind of play guitar, even when the other backing tracks, I play really slow and very dragged out because I'm thinking what I want to sing.
Yeah.
And in this case, like, I knew that like you can do that within the boxes, right? But it felt more unnatural.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the way that you approach is kind of unique. Most guitar players don't think that way when they improvise. They actually think boxes and shapes by default, right? So what they need is more thinking, like more melodic thinking, and not playing with their fingers as much. But it sounds like you've got the reverse problem, which is you are thinking actively when you're playing, and you're creating melodies that you could sing, and you aren't playing with your fingers as much. You know what I mean? You want the best of both worlds, but it's just interesting because most people, it's the opposite.